There was something strange about Johnny Aysgarth. I knew it long before I married him.
I want nothing but to spend the rest of my life with you. And if you were to die first,
If I were to die first. From that moment on, my life was filled with fear. Not of Johnny, I loved him too much to really be afraid. But the fear of not knowing, the agony of waiting, of wondering how it would happen, of waking in the middle of the night, shaking with terror, and finding myself praying that whatever it was, it would be done quickly and with mercy. These are the facts, the evidence before the crime. I wanted you to know, in case I met a violent end.
The novel Before the Fact by Francis Iles, which is the basis for Suspicion, had interested Hitchcock for some time and also RKO. They bought it in 1935. The film ended up being made by Hitchcock in 1941. It was an experimental novel in that it was told by the murder victim. And the murder victim, Lena, actually becomes an accessory before the fact to her own murder, which is what ends the book. And he set out creating a script of this in late 1940 with his wife Alma Reville, his constant collaborator, and his assistant Joan Harrison. And they came up with a draft script, which was then turned over to Samson Rafelson, who probably looked like a good candidate to take this rather raffish, none too respectable hero and making him acceptable to American audiences.
I hardly believe it. It can't be the same girl. What's her name? Do you know her?
Yes, but lay off, Johnny. You've enough on your hands for one day.
Various titles were tried. Johnny was actually Hitchcock's preferred title. It was the character played by Cary Grant, and that would have made it something of a character study of this odd character. I don't know if it had anything to do with the fact that Hitchcock's Sealyham, his prized dog, was also named Johnny. He appears in the film.
Oh, dog, eh? That's right. Old dog's are fun to me.
Got him on the face. Go on.
Anyway, Hitchcock wanted to call it Johnny, and the people who tested various titles came up with the title Suspicion as one that people would pay to go see, and Hitchcock was horrified. He thought it a trashy title, but he accepted it in the end.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Was that your leg? I had no idea we were going into a tunnel. I thought the compartment was empty.
It's interesting how Hitchcock liked trains in his movies. I mean, North by Northwest, as, Heavy on the Train, and Strangers on a Train, of course, and Suspicion. But it's how Lena first meets Johnny is on the train.
You don't smoke, do you?
No, I don't.
The other thing about Hitchcock, Joan Fontaine meeting Cary Grant in that way is very much the definitive Hitchcock heroine. Somewhat sexually repressed or not yet sexually abandoned, and she's blonde, and she's beautiful and graceful and fragile and British.
Lena will never marry. She's not the marrying sort. Now she's no need to worry. There's enough to care for her for the rest of her life.
Joan Fontaine won the Academy Award for Suspicion, which perhaps she won because she hadn't won for Rebecca, which was her first Hitchcock picture. She's superb in both of them. Suspicion is a kind of sequel to the character that she played in Rebecca, again, a timid English spinsterish type, and kind of amazed that somebody as attractive as Cary Grant really is interested in her.
I may seem provincial, but frankly, I can't understand men like you. You always give me the feeling that you're laughing at me.
No, I give you my word.
Well, I think the thing about Cary Grant being such a great actor for my father was he could do either. He could do comedy, he could do heavy drama, he could do in between. He could give my father whatever he wanted on the screen.
I once asked Cary Grant about Hitchcock, and he said, well, the great thing about Hitchcock is you come on a Hitchcock set and everything's exactly the way you thought it would be. It's just what you thought it would be, exactly. And then I asked Hitchcock once about Cary Grant, and he says, One doesn't direct Cary Grant. One just puts it in front of a camera.
Well, I've always thought that Cary Grant was Hitchcock's ideal leading man. In that Cary Grant, in the very nature of his screen character, always had about him a kind of dark coloration underneath the good nature, the bonhomie of the character. And I always thought that touch of darkness in Cary Grant was just perfect for Hitchcock because it implies all the Hitchcockian themes, the fact that we are rarely what we seem to be, or at least entirely what we seem to be. It implies the possibility that good contains evil and evil contains good.
Cary Grant could be a very ambiguous actor.
I'm going through with this deal. I don't want any interference from you or anyone else. Is that clear?
Yes, that's clear.
And this being his first collaboration with Hitchcock out of 4, all of them superb. It shows the two sides of Cary Grant that Hitchcock was going to exploit in all 4 pictures, but particularly in Notorious and Suspicion. But it's auspicious in that it is the first Hitchcock-Cary Grant collaboration. They got along very, very well.
There is an extraordinary moment in the film which one almost thinks could have been a whole sequence. Just after they've been to church, Hitchcock cuts to a scene of them on top of a hill and the wind's blowing, and you would swear he is killing her.
What did you think I was trying to do? Kill you?
Certainly, the way that scene opens leaves that possibility for the spectator to imagine, and then suddenly it becomes a comical and a romantic scene. And that often happens in this film, that you will start off with what appears to be the bad Johnny and then find out that really what you've been seeing is something very innocuous.
What does your family call you, monkey face? I still think my way was best.
The picture's got a lot of humor in it, sort of the typical wicked Hitchcock sense of humor. He's amused by the ambiguities of Cary Grant.
Well, you're the first woman I've ever met who said yes when she meant yes.
What did the others say?
Hanged if I know anything but yes.
I think Hitchcock enjoyed putting a twist on that attractiveness.
Monkey face? I've been broke all my life.
In Hitchcock pictures, nothing is ever as it seems. So Cary Grant is not going to be exactly as he seems either.
You must be old Johnny's wife.
Yes, I am.
Oh, didn't he ever tell you about me?
Beaky? Oh, you're Beaky!
That's what they used to call me at school.
I think Nigel Bruce has never been better. He always played those sort of bumbling, fatuous Englishmen.
Put my foot in it as usual, have I? Didn't he tell you?
But he was very good in it and very appealing. You sort of see why she comes to like him.
Beaky, isn't it about time you grew up?
I say, old girl, you're scolding me.
You need a scolding.
Do I?
Yes, you do.
Shall I go and stand in the corner?
Nigel Bruce is a very important character. First of all, he was known as Dr. Watson in the Sherlock Holmes movies, and he's just a wonderful, fat-headed English character who is both ridiculous and lovable all the way through, and whom Lena becomes very fond of and even clings to when she begins to have her doubts about the man she's married.
Why, he's president of the whole Barry thingamajig. Gets a salary, writes his own checks.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Oh, what's wrong about that? I say, old Bean, Lena's been telling me you're a bit soft in the head. Is that it?
Well, it sounded like that to me.
Oh, come now, old girl, that's not very wifely, huh?
When she begins to suspect that Johnny is planning to murder him, and even that he has at a certain point, he becomes the MacGuffin, the red herring, the cause of all of her suspicions and the solution to the false mystery she is trying to solve, as if she was living in one of her favorite books. But the great thing about Beaky is that he is just such a fabulous type, and every time he comes into the picture, he really brings a special kind of humor and charm. As was so often the case with Hitchcock's character actors in supporting roles, he gives them a lot to do.
D-O-U-B-T, doubt, F-U-L, doubtful. I'll take that, old girl. Well, personally, old Bean, I don't see what's wrong with the scheme, but if you say there's no good going ahead, well, let's go ahead.
The Scrabble sequence, I think the game is called Anagrams in England, is a beautiful example of the subjective technique that Hitchcock is really using systematically, I think for the first time in Suspicion, which is what makes it such a great film. The same technique we'll see used in Rear Window, where everything is shown from Jimmy Stewart's point of view. Everything is being shown from Joan Fontaine's point of view. And when she looks at the word murder and suddenly envisions Beaky being thrown off a cliff by Johnny, you sense both the terror of the moment and also the completely fantastical nature of it. It's just it's a hallucination. All the more so because she's the one who formed the word murder, just as she's the one who buys the book Murder on the Footbridge, and all these other sinister signs that keep turning up are sort of like letters she sent to herself.
Sorry I'm late. Could I have some well done, please, Burton?
Yes, miss.
Hitchcock has lots of great dinner scenes because in a Hitchcock film, the action isn't what people are doing, it's what they're thinking. So you can show a completely banal situation, a group of people sitting around a dinner table eating and having a light conversation, and by the cutting and the close-ups show a whole other drama that is going on during the dinner. In this case, all the things that Joan Fontaine is hearing.
If you're going to kill somebody, do it simply. Am I right, Dr. Sedbusk?
You're right. Just as long as you don't get caught.
All of this sounds perfectly innocuous to everyone else in the room. It's just light banter, but for Lena, it's the final confirmation that Johnny is going to try to poison her.
How would you do it simply?
I don't know, dear, but I'd use the most obvious method. The most important thing is that no one should suspect me.
For instance?
For instance, poison. Just use the first one that came to my mind. Say, arsenic.
Ah, arsenic.
Hitchcock was in a battle from the first moment he set foot on American soil with the production code office, which had been set up in the 30s to censor American filmmakers. In Suspicion, one of the things that had the Breen offices all exercised and upset was Phyllis Swinghurst, who is not even named, but is seen at the dinner party scene. She's a guest of Isabel, the mystery writer.
What's wrong with it, my dear chap?
She's very mannish. She's dressed like a man. For all we know, she could be Isabel's lover. And this is in the script, and the Breen office objected and said, take out this or that dialogue.
What about Mrs. Aysgarth? She has a strange glint in her eye.
Most of it stayed in, and Phyllis stayed in, and he got away with it.
Think of it. This very minute, there are hundreds of people who've committed murder, and they're walking about freely.
Thousands.
Do you suppose those murderers are happy, Johnny?
Oh, I don't know, dear. I don't see why they shouldn't be.
The way that Cary Grant and Joan Fontaine play off each other, or the way that Joan Fontaine reacts to Cary Grant in the story, it's all done not just in the performances, which are both extremely, in fact, perfect, but also very much in the way Hitchcock shoots it. The glass of milk is an obvious example.
One of my favorite things in the movie that's so pure Hitchcock is Cary Grant with the glass of milk going up the staircase. And Hitchcock later admitted that was not accomplished, that look, with a light on the glass of milk. There's a light in the glass of milk that actually is why it so stands out. And of course, you can't focus on anything but that glass of milk going up there that you think may be poisoned.
The ending was totally different on the screen than as it was written. What they wanted to do was Cary Grant's character really wanted to get rid of his wife. So there's a famous scene of him carrying the glass with the milk, and she was in bed. Now, what you saw before that was her writing a letter to her mother saying she knew that her husband was going to kill her, but it was fine because she didn't want to live without him. So you see her put the letter in an envelope. You see her lick it, put the stamps on, and then he comes in with the glass of milk, and she drinks the glass of milk, and then she says to him, "Oh, Johnny, would you please post this letter to my mother? And then the last scene in the picture was him walking out to the mailbox, whistling, and putting the letter in the mailbox. So you know he's going to get caught. But they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't allow Cary Grant to be a murderer.
The fact that we see Hitchcock mailing a letter and his cameo and many other things involving letters and the village mailbox make me think that Hitchcock was still hoping to make Johnny a murderer even as he was shooting, that he had it up his sleeve as a kind of alternate ending but never got to do it. And after battles and suggestions from various people, he came up with the ending we have.
Johnny, where are you going?
First, I'm taking you to your mother's.
And then what?
And don't worry, I won't bother you again.
And that's the way it went out, and that's the way it won Joan Fontaine Academy Award.
Why were you asking Isabel those questions about the poison? What were you planning to do with it? Johnny, you were going to kill yourself. My darling, my darling.
Yes. But I saw that was a cheap way out. So I'm going back to see it through, prison term and everything.
Hitchcock's activity in Hollywood was very successful. He was able to work with the best talent available, and this included a number of very talented composers. Franz Waxman's relationship with Hitchcock began through the machinations of David O. Selznick. Suspicion was his second film with Hitchcock.
I think that Hitchcock and Waxman were perfectly suited to continue a relationship that they started on Rebecca. They were both very much Anglophiles. Hitchcock actually got along best with composers that were.
And Waxman's effort to capture Hitchcock's plan in presenting this drama as a movement of the heroine from innocence to worldliness is to draw on music at first, which is very frivolous and lighthearted. There's an emphasis on dance music, waltzes.
Hello, monkey face.
Hello, Johnny.
Especially Vienna Blood, the famous waltz, is brought back repeatedly through the course of the film as a sort of sentimental reminder of the innocent beginning of their affair. So Waxman moves from very broad, sweeping melodies and very romantic, operatic kinds of gestures to steadily more contained, repetitive, claustrophobic formulations. There's a great deal of variety in the score.
My father was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with Alfred Hitchcock 4 times, and in each case he was able to bring his own talent to a film and add a new dimension, and in some cases an indelible mark enhancing the quality of that film.
I think I'll take the shortcut.
Suspicion was the biggest moneymaker of the year for RKO, even though it had gone way over budget, and despite a 6-month shooting schedule and very big star budgets.
Years later, and kind of spearheaded at that time by Ted Turner, colorization was done, and they did find that more people watched it on television when it was shown if it was colorized than if it was in black and white. One of the great things was, though, before they could colorize, they went in and really preserved most of those films because they had to preserve the original negative in order to make a colorized version of it. Now, the thing I think that's not good about colorization personally is the fact that it brings different values to a scene by having color that weren't planned by the eye of the director or the art director or the costume designer, because they were actually doing it for black and white photography. Because Hitchcock painted so well with black and white photography, I think that it shouldn't be tampered with, and I think it's much less effective with the color, no matter how good the color might be.
Hitchcock's great talent was that of conveying paranoia to a mass audience. And he could convey that sort of subjective fear, whether it was the fear of being poisoned or just a sense, my God, my husband might actually be a bad man, he might actually be a murderer. And Hitchcock could convey that without words.
The whole thing works because of his director's vision and the way he's plotted it out. He does more without really calling attention to it. They're just kind of wittily and blithely in there, but are so effective. That's what a director does, a great director. And it's a difference between a great director and an ordinary director.